You are listening to part 5 of the podcast series, 15 Laws of Growth.
Law number 5 is the law of environment. And this law basically says growth thrives in conducive surroundings. Mark Cain said, "The first step towards success is taken when you refuse to be a captive of the environment you first find yourself in." In other words, Mark is basically saying, you've got to change your environment. If you're not in a good environment, you've got to change that environment, because there's an environment that is conducive to growth and there's an environment that's not conducive to growth. Because when you're in a growth environment, everybody is lifted by the growth environment, and everybody does better, plays over their head, and looks better than any other time. Isn't that true? And by the way, let me turn it around. When you're in a bad environment for growth, a negative environment. I grew up in a negative environment. I had to change my whole growth environment. I grew up with a bunch of people that moving backwards slowly was their definition of progress. And when you're in a bad growth environment, let me tell you something, you're worse than you really are. You're worse. Trust me, if you're in a bad growth environment, you can go around and you can say, I know I look bad, but I'm not quite that bad. I'm really not. I'm a little better than I look. I know I look bad, and I know it, but I'm a little bit better. So when you're in a bad growth environment, you're better than you look. But boy, I'll tell you right now, when you're in a great growth environment, you're not near as good as you think you are. So the law, this great law of environment and growth environment is absolutely huge. And so I sat down, because I wasn't in a growth environment. When I really began growing in the 70s, I'm here to tell you I was not in a growth environment. And I said, okay, I've got to change it, because I'm not in this, so I got to make my own growth environment while I'm here. And so I wrote this in 1976. I still have the card I wrote on. In 1976, here's what I wrote. My growth environment is a place where others are ahead of me. Oh, yes. Let me just stop and say this. If you're the head of the class, you're in the wrong class. You need to get out. Nobody should ever be the head of the class. If you're the head of the class, you're the ones telling everybody else how to get better in it. You need to always be around people that are faster, quicker, better, smarter, sharper, more experienced than you are. If you are the best in the group, you got to get out of the group real quick, because you'll begin to settle so fast. Number 2, a growth environment is a place where I'm continually challenged. A growth environment, number 3, is a place where my focus is forward. A growth environment is a place where the atmosphere is affirming. A growth environment is a place where I'm often out of my comfort zone. A growth environment is a place where I wake up excited. A growth environment is a place where failure is not my enemy. I know that I'm in a growth environment when others are growing. In other words, I'm not the only one growing. When you're the star because you're the one that's growing and everyone else is fading, there's a statement there. A growth environment is a place where people desire change. A growth environment is a place where growth is modeled and where growth is expected. Now, when we talk about a growth environment, there are too many people who wait for everything to be conducive for their growth to start growing. In other words, they say, well, when everybody's encouraging me and when I'm in that right environment, then I'll start growing. Now, let me say this. The growth environment that you need to create begins with you.